How's your job going?
It's really good. There's probably another half year of work there. It's
Mm.
been an actual transformation. It's a really good story to tell because we are faster, more predictable, more transparent. I need to create one of those um, after action. I can't remember what you call it. It's not an after action review, but like a wrap up summary for the client about here's the problem, here's what we did, here's the outcome.
Ooh, yeah.
Like an experience report, kind of. I don't remember if you did. You send me the agenda or the outline for that. I don't know how you do it. If there's a special
If
way
I
to do it.
didn't, I will because I know I did that. I do that for everybody, and for some, it's a little more abbreviated. Some are it's a little more elaborate, but I'll be glad to share that with you.
That'd be great. I'd like to start filling it out now because I'm going to have to start thinking about this. Has been a great client, but like transformation can't last forever,
Hmm.
and so I'm thinking about probably 2025. I'll have to jump. I don't know. They haven't yet said, um, that's enough. We've got like half the team still to reboot. But the CTO, I reported to the CTO, and she was like, everything's great. I do have to justify all this money I'm spending on you every quarter. And I'm like, well, good. I hope that's easy. Okay, let me know because the whole idea is you're getting more value than I'm charging. So if that starts to not be true, let me know. Um, but if at some point that's going to tip over, and so, but it validates the approach, like small to medium sized businesses, 500 people or so, where you can report to the CTO or somebody who has the authority to dedicate money to it and make real change. Like this is definitely the kind of client to target. I don't know where we need to we need to get some people into the top of the funnel.
When you say at the top of the funnel, from a sales
Sale.
perspective, oh yeah. Because first and foremost, I think there's a different value on different coaching depending on where you're providing it in the organization. And so, how does the customer perceive that value?
Yeah.
So, if they're not part of the conversation, then I think you're missing a big opportunity to deliver the value to them that they're needing and wanting. So,
Yeah, because I can see like if a client comes to us and says, "Hey, I need help sorting out my support team. It's 9 people and they're not efficient enough." It's like if we did a stellar job on that, we might cut costs 20%. I'm just pulling numbers out of the air. Like there could be an economic benefit, but it would be more. Whereas if you're talking about coaching the entire system of delivery,
hmm
someplace where there's no business happening if the tech isn't efficient and high quality, and they're generating. I was thinking about this the other day because I'm running into people and I'm thinking about when I was at 2017 and I was in the card services division, which is the division that gets new customers in who are card holders, like upgrades the card holders. Anyway, it was in some presentation and they shook because they had like 5 major divisions, and the card services group on an annual basis generated $30 billion, and we're in there and we're setting up a whole agile release train, and there's like 12 teams and very expensive thoughts and things, words being said. And I'm thinking, if you can take a group that generates $30 billion a year and make it 0.01% more efficient,
hmm
that's still an extra $30 million a year they have that they wouldn't have had otherwise, right? Just give me 0.01% of the upside on the outcome of our engagement, and and you're set for life, right? So like, yeah, targeting, I think, and the way that you frame that for the customer, yeah, there's still an opportunity there, but that's all value based consulting. And how do you measure it? How do you get to everybody to agree that this is a valid measurement and it should determine the payout? That's all. I don't know of anybody doing that. Who's doing that? How would you do that?
we were experimenting with that with a former company that I had. Um, back in 2000. Yeah, 2000, 2001, because we didn't want to follow the traditional model, and it just didn't seem, it seemed arbitrary,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. And for me, I also thought, oh, it also leaves money on the table. If we can charge what is appropriate based on the value that you're getting, if we deliver, um, it should be a win-win.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so instead of just typical time and materials, blah blah blah. So yeah, yeah,
I
okay.
mean, it sets you up like you can charge for all these hours, but then the logical question is, well, what were they for? Like, right? And if you can't demonstrate that, then you shouldn't have bought the hours, right?
Right.
Whereas if you can discuss, you can demonstrate what it's for, the value of it, well, then that sets you up to say, well, I think a fair price is 10% of the value, net
Yes,
value created.
exactly.
Do you think you really think that's a bad deal? I'm proposing that I give you no $10 and you give me back $1.
Mm-hmm.
That's called being good at business. You should take that
Mm-hmm.
deal.
If I give you um, $100 today and say,
Spot me a 10.
yeah, and tomorrow it'll be worth this much more. I mean, that's it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, and it's not just a static one-time transaction. We're talking about the output from the system. So you not only get that $100 now, you get it next year, you get it the year
Mm-hmm.
after. I'm only asking for 10% for this period of time now that I've spent with you. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
looking for it, obviously. This is not a back end deal. I'm not a
Right.
coach looking for a back end. I'm not looking for points on this production. Yeah, the whole question is, how do you make it clear to them that that's actually what's happening? Like without you, it wouldn't have happened. And then in their real valid numbers in terms of dollars.
So my business partner at the time, Marty, and I, we kicked this about quite a bit, um, to figure out where the holes were, and that was one of the issues. Was okay. So one of them is, how do you assess that value, and that's all about having the conversation with the customer to determine how to do that. Number two, the issue is sometimes those increases in productivity, whatever, can be for multiple different factors.
Yeah.
And so how do you come up with an agreed upon, between you and the customer, these are the factors that we believe are instrumental in adding, to your productivity or whatever it happens to be,
Yeah.
adding to your revenue. And maybe these are the ones that we're affecting. But at the end of the day, is everybody going to agree to that when it comes time to belly up to the bar? The other thing is measuring. So, how do you measure it, and when do you measure it? And when you do measure it, is everybody still on? Is everybody still on board?
Yeah.
Because if you've really done an effective job, that bill could be substantially higher than a traditional time and materials situation.
It should be much higher
Mm-hmm.
because you've been much more effective
Mm-hmm.
in tweaking the
And
system in a
so
way that's obvious to everybody. Yeah.
customers that are, I'll call it, traditionally trained
Cost
in
accountants.
in time and materials. And I say this because this is how we've trained them. So
Hmm.
this is how they think. But if that's the model that they're used to, trying to get them on board with a different model, that was probably the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
Um,
Big
and
number
it
bad
also,
when it comes to expenses.
yeah. The other thing is, getting people to, and when I say people, I meant us as the consultants, to recognize you're not going to see the revenue the same way because we would, I mean, we build weekly,
Mm-hmm.
and you got 20 consultants um, billing weekly. I mean, we're gen-
Yeah,
we're generating a nice amount of revenue, and we have 30-day terms and stuff, and so you're seeing cash flow
financial
come
flow
in early and often,
often.
which is a good thing. And so changing that business model is also about having a shift in our own attitudes about when we expect revenue to come in. And so I think what we ended up deciding to do was experiment with it just in one little segment instead of shift the entire company to that model, because that would have been, I mean, you're going from all this cash that you got to, ooh, okay, so we're gonna go months maybe.
And is there some risk there because for some reason, if this is a good faith, just a difference of opinion, or let alone shenanigans, there's some risk that you can get 6 months down the road and no, no, it doesn't say that at all.
Yep.
It's not 50%. It's more like 3%. Here's what we pay
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
So there's
And
risk inherent.
how do you reconcile that? And so yeah,
Especially
it's
in a weird situation where they suddenly have a lump sum payment that's way higher than that they've ever paid to any consultant, and they got some people on the board who are like, "Is this even legitimate?" I can see how that could go wrong
mm-hmm,
in a number of different ways.
mm-hmm. I don't know that we ever were able to roll that out to anybody. Most of the prospects and ultimately customers, clients that we introduced it to are like, we'll just take the time and materials. And it was because while they recognize that, yeah, the value might be a lot better. Some of those hurdles, overcoming those hurdles and reconciling those issues that we just talked about, they were like, that's just too much effort. Let's just go the easy route and go time and materials. Like,
That's the other thing. You have to really solve the problem for
yeah.
sure, like for real. So here's let me let me just think out loud. Tell me what you think of this. I'm seeing a lot fewer inquiries for coaching. The ones that I'm seeing are still like low rate.
$60 an hour,
Yeah.
60 $70 an hour. Yeah,
So
yeah.
typically, what I've said is anybody who's looking for it's like saying, "Hey, can I get a tune up for $20?" Like anybody who do a car, I don't want them near my car. There's no way anybody who knows what they're doing can do anything useful for $20 that sounds like a tune up, right? That's the attitude I've had towards these. So it violates that principle. But I'm just
Mm-hmm.
thinking off the top of my head, maybe a way to do this is to say we will charge a really modest hourly rate just to keep the lights on for us as part of the compensation. The other part of the compensation package is the whole
Ah,
value based back end.
a
So at
blended,
least,
kind of a blended sort of thing.
yeah, because there's risk on both sides. And quite frankly, we're taking on risk if we do this. And we obviously believe we know we can solve the problem and we've got the airtight back end. But like maybe that's I don't know, some sort of hybrid approach. Because
Mm,
it would get them a really it would here's what it would be. It would get them a way to get us in the door at a rate that they could never have us for otherwise. It allows us to start work, demonstrate the value, right? Set it up and really drive. Because like if it's going at this company, not to brag, but like it's going really well at this company and they're willing to, they're still we haven't knocked the whole values thing. So I can't say to them, you have an extra $500 million you wouldn't have otherwise. I can tell you their team, their team, their team is twice as fast as it used to be
mm.
based on the velocity data.
And you can tie that directly to your
Outcomes?
coaching. Mm-hmm.
To the coaching. Yes, I can tie that. Yes. Before I was here, the teams were not organized around value. They didn't have any metrics in place. They didn't have any work processes in place. They didn't have any work definition in place. Everybody could see that nothing happened. Everybody was on individual missions all day, every day. We don't have any metrics from before the teams existed.
Mm,
And that's been one of the things that's really stuck in the COO's craw. But like that's like saying, hey, uh, where's all the history books from the Cambrian era? Like, there's no records of, like, by definition, this before anything existed, so there can't be any measurement.
right.
Now, when we launch the teams, we do see like um, an improvement in velocity and story points, which I don't love. I'm trying to move them to throughput, but you can see the teams getting faster over time, and they're more. The main thing was predictability. Like the business would be like, "Hey, we want to do this thing in August." And we can set up with the external vendor and the partners and all these people in the webinars, but if IT doesn't deliver, we're fucked. And there was no confidence last year, and now there's confidence. So yeah.
So can you associate or assign a dollar value to that predictability, monetizing that predictability? So what in the customer's eyes, what's that degree of predictability worth?
What an interesting question.
If you can have that conversation up front, what's that what's that what's that predictability worth to you? And it's not an easy off the
Yeah.
cuff. You really have to think about it, and some people are just lazy and don't want to be bothered with thinking about stuff. But that's where you can really, if you can get somebody to think through and maybe help them with it. Um, what is the value of that increased predictability, and correlate that to some dollar amount? There, you could say, okay, so then there's some increase in value there, and that could be the basis of your value based coaching. And so, if you can get unanimity across the board, everybody agreeing, yeah, this is, if you can, this is what we want. This is our objective: increase predictability. What's that worth to you? And if that's the marching order,
Yeah. So how do you quantify the value of predictability? Is what I hear you saying.
yeah,
So this is why I got all those Tom Gilb downloads. Remember there was that one weird one, the name of the weird Quantier, I think.
mm-hmm.
I need to peruse that PDF because his whole thing was if it exists, we can quantify it, and he's pretty confident about that. And I'm guessing this might actually be one of the. It's just a ton of. There might be a method out of there that we could use, which would be better than nothing. So that's the plus Tom's got a fair amount of credibility on this. I mean, like he is teaching companies how to do this using these methods.
The other thing is that we discovered in our little hypothesis was you have to really trust the customer.
Mm,
If you can't trust them
mm,
that they're going to back out or something at the end, then that raises again that whole level of risk. And having that conversation with them, not about trust, but having that conversation about the risk to you up front before you even begin anything, is important. And privately, at the end of the day, you do have to assess: do I trust this organization? Um,
yeah,
that they will live up to the agreement. Bottom line.
totally. And organizations are just aggregations of people. So what it comes down to is do you trust this person that you're making the agreement with?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And some I wouldn't even approach with. But others, oddly enough, I remember we had a very long term contract with one of the state agencies. I'll have to tell you about that sometime. But it
Yeah.
ended up that we had a tight relationship with the CIO of this agency, and there was a high level of trust. And so um, it evolved to the point where, historically people, and this is why was hesitant to do any business with the state, vendors getting paid late and stuff like that. We were actually we were actually getting paid early. So we had 30-day terms. We found that she was getting us paid, and sometimes in 14 days. Like, why is there a check coming in? I don't know. Oh, she paid us early. What the? Okay. But that was the highest degree of trust that we had, and it was reciprocal. And
Yeah.
so you've got to be able to have that, though, that high degree of trust that everybody's on the up and up and abiding by the spirit of the agreement. So,
Yeah, the more I do this job, the more I think like it's not enough to have a paper agreement or a letter of the law agreement, right? Because the whole point of this, like, we're not digging ditches, we're not putting in sidewalks. We don't have like, yes, we can objectively, quantitatively define what good looks like, what the outcomes are. So it's not like it's but you're dealing with culture and people's like, so you can't, like, the distance can't be too far that you're trying to take people, right? You have to start with a certain level of alignment with leadership
mm-hmm.
about how do you think about this thing? Do we see the same problem? Are you clear on what we're going to have to do? Are you clear on what you're going to have to do? You're not just going to write a check and watch everybody else march. You're going to have to confront. If you don't have that, it's like trying to help somebody get in shape as a personal trainer when they don't want to do it. Like, that
They're busy
person's
stuffing donuts in their pie hole. Yeah, I'll do this. I'll do this.
yeah. What it comes down to ultimately, the customer doesn't want the service.
Right.
They think they do. Would love to look like that, but they're not
Exactly. They
doing
want
push.
the outcome without the work.
Yeah, yeah. Which is like not what we're selling. We're selling actual push-ups.
Yeah.
So the value of not having certain customers is like infinite, I think. Like,
Yeah.
you're wasting your time and you can't get success. And meanwhile, the people who really can get success, who really need that help, are frozen out. So yeah, it's what the marketing part of this and really finding the right. Again, like, the small to medium size, up to 500 people, maybe up to 1,000. It's so different than working for these huge, large things that have been around forever and have all these layers of stuff. And you can say
Absolutely.
it comes down to having a person with decision making and budgetary authority, but that's like not all of, like, part of it is the culture of, like, I don't know, I'll talk to the CEO and we'll probably just decide to do this. And if you haven't heard from me by Wednesday, just assume that it's happening. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't happen at Bank of America, right? But sometimes you need that kind of speed and, to make these changes.
The other caveat is, and I went through this at one organization. The person that's
That's a
championing
word, championing.
um,
Yeah.
this initiative can be influential, high up, and trustworthy.
Mm.
But 6 months in, yeah, Rob, he's gone. He's out, either of his own volition or
Wanted to
somebody
spend more time with
else's.
somebody's family.
And so then it becomes a different game. And I found this at this farm that I was at. Guy was gung ho. I mean, he was the champion, and he had corporate's ear, and everything was good. We had free reign to do what we needed to do,
Mm.
and we were making inroads. And then one day somebody says, "Oh yeah, so and so, he's out." What do you mean he's out? Yeah,
On vacation?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
No.
permanent
Not,
vacation from that
oh, yes.
organization. ooh, that's different. So what are we gonna do? And it did change the dynamic a little bit. Fortunately, we had already had, I don't know, 9 months or something, 8 or 9 months of history, and we were already kind of down that road. But it did change the dynamic. And so pushing harder was not in the cards any longer.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
corporate was like, ew, our, because corporate actually wanted him in that spot. I don't know what transpired.
Huh.
Corporate was really dedicated to moving towards better agility.
They wanted
Um,
that outcome.
they wanted the outcome, and even the CEO was like, "This is the direction we need to go." But this was a North American operation, and a lot of these global pharma organizations, as you well know, they got all these little silos and what
Yep.
have you, and the North American ops. I think they were skeptical anyway, and so once they were able to get this guy out of their way, they were like, okay, we don't have to do what corporate wants anymore. Let them suck on their own agile stuff. So,
So if you'd had some value-based contract in place that said if this KPI hits this number by this date, you will pay out X number, blah blah blah, based on our understanding that that represents value, blah blah blah. They that that agreement might not have been worth much at that point.
I could speculate, and since we didn't, I again, it's only speculation, but
Yeah.
that's one of those situations where it could have been it could have been an interesting conversation come pay up time. So,
Yeah, the person who made this agreement is no longer here. It doesn't reflect our blah blah
mm-hmm,
blah. We don't no longer think it blah blah blah. And your options
mm-hmm,
at that point are just to be like okay or sue and yeah,
right,
as opposed to an agreement you made with somebody within an organization with 400 people, and you've had coffee with everybody in the org, and it's like
exactly. If you've got an organization, even 1,000 people, and your contract is with the CEO, in other words, the owner of the company,
mm-hmm, person who controls everything,
the person that
effectively.
controls everything, unless they close up shop, if your agreement is with them, then you reduce the chance that there's somebody that gets removed or something, unless Joe Blow, who owns this machining organization, suddenly dies in a boating accident, and his sons and daughters are like, we own the company now.
Yeah.
So then you might have an issue. But if you are, I would suspect, if you are able to cement an agreement with the company owner,
Mm.
and that owner may be a board, but if they're the ones that are paying the bills and you trust them, then I think you have a much better shot versus in a large organization. So, to your point, the larger the organization, the less likely you are going to be able to have that value based contract.
There's just too much entrenched traditional thinking, too much cost
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
accounting
Mm-hmm.
embedded in the policies and the
Mm-hmm.
assumptions and the culture. Yeah.
And that's sad. That's too bad. But you and I individually probably, and I don't want to say unequivocally, but probably aren't going to change that in the industry.
I think that's fine. I mean, you could flip it around and say what it really it represents is existential risk for those large companies at some point. Like the way that, the top 50 companies in the S&P 500 have used to stick around for 70 years and now they're like 20, every 20 years there's a different like the companies go out of business is the point I'm making, right? And if they're not willing to make change rapidly enough, that's how that happens. And so if they I'm not trying to put us in a place of high glory that like unless they accept our value based demands, they won't be able to be successful. But you know, if these results are what we say they are, then that's something they should want. And if they're going to cut themselves off from that, then that's a strategic direction they could go that might be risky for them compared to the companies. The way this works is small companies come along, they're better, they're cheaper, they're faster, they're higher quality, and they eat your lunch. So
Right.
you don't have to do our value based stuff, but you need to do some value based stuff because the fintech people are coming for you.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you know that may be a lever. So the way to approach it is those smaller organizations that are open-minded
Hungry.
and willing to, and you know, they may have a better um, structure anyway, just because you know they may not have a whole lot of money up front, and so if you can really impact their revenue, they have more financial resources down the road. It's again, it's a win-win. It's like give me $1 today, and you know tomorrow you'll have 1,000. It's like, well, that's a no-brainer. Okay, because I only have a
Yeah.
dollar today anyway. So
But if you could actually, yes, if we could find those companies and help them set up their little flywheels,
mm-hmm,
like that's right. That's the, I mean, just in purely crass terms, that's the bucket of gold.
mm-hmm. And honestly, Matt, if you just continue to do that and you begin to amass enough success stories that you can legitimately say, yep, we did this here, we increased this there. And after you've done that enough, presumably you will have established a solid track record. And to organizations that want to engage you, you can say, well, this is how we work, this is our track record, um, this is our approach. If you want to engage us, that's fine, but this is our approach. And
This is how it works, and this is what it costs.
right, and if you're not interested in that, then you
Yeah.
know, Bank of America comes knocking. And it's like, well, I suspect you're probably not a candidate, but but this is how we work, and then it becomes a take it or leave it.
Yes.
Um, how badly do you want to change? And
If you reframe it for them and say, it's not, am I the person that you want? It's,
mm-hmm,
are you the customer that I? Because I know that with the right kind of customer, you can change their lives. But
mm-hmm,
with the wrong kind of customer, it doesn't happen. So yes, that's, I think that's all the, yeah, the really good people do that because they can.
right, exactly. But you know, I think your foot in the door is starting in the smaller organizations, and who knows? There's probably enough of those smaller organizations that you could probably make a living on that for 20 years and never even touch um, a larger organization.
So a nuts and bolts question for you in terms of those recommendations or customer testimonies. Have you done that in the past? I was thinking just like having, you know, uh, using Teams or Zoom or something to get the people I report to, the people I work with, to say, and just asking them, hey, what's it like to work with this guy? What it specifically did he do? Would you work with him again? Like it's just a handful of questions to show. Is that the approach that you take that you think, and then put those clips up on your sites?
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah,
one of the tenets that I learned was get customer
testimonials.
testimonies as soon as you can. Number one, while it's fresh in their mind.
Mm,
Um, get quotes, and obviously, you know, some of them will say, well, yeah, I do feel this way, but legally, we're not supposed to use the company's name and this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
But to the degree that you can, get testimonies as soon as possible, like when you're closing out a contract, an
Don't wait and come
engagement,
back in two
whatever,
months later.
because people forget, people,
Yeah.
have second thought. Get those testimonies as early as possible, whether it's in quotes, video. Wow,
Seems
those are
pretty
those are good. Those are
compelling.
powerful.
Yeah. Okay. I've never done that, and I'm a little bit reluctant to, but I think it's something I just have to get over. It's
Yeah,
marketing.
I was just going to say, and honestly, once you start asking for those testimonies, um, it becomes easier. You realize, oh, that wasn't such a hurdle,
It's like
because if
asking a
people are
girl out the
happy,
first time.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. They should be full of gratitude and like, oh, of course I would do this. Like
mm-hmm,
you did so much for us. That's the vibe that you want, right?
yeah, and the other thing I'd say is also, you want two levels, two levels. That I'm not describing it right. You do want an organizational testimonial. In other words, the your champion, to say, yeah, we brought this guy in and this is why, and he delivered.
Mm-hmm.
That's at that organizational
Like
level.
CTO and VP.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But also at the individual level, if you're helping, a product owner learn to do their job better, um, you want to get their testimonial. Yeah, Matt was awesome. He really enlightened me on a bunch of stuff. That way, you've got both at that smaller micro level as well as at a macro level.
Yeah.
Um, because at the end of the day, like you said, organizations are just an assembly of people. And whether you're functioning as a product manager, product owner, or scrum master, whatever it happens to be, developer, it helps to under it helps to have confidence that the person that you're bringing in is relatable, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's able to not just speak at the organizational level, like let's say a big five would come in and do, but also work in the trenches and have a good effect and stuff. So having those at both levels.
Yeah, that's an awesome. Yeah, I've definitely met a lot of coaches who were spewing theory and really weren't that effective with individual contributors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna hit stop. I feel like I don't know if this has been an agile thing or not.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even notice that you were
I was been
recording.
recording the entire time. I don't know. Mike can go through it and see if it's useful for anything. But I've been Matt Beam. You've been,
I've been Jeff Singleton.
yeah. When we're hitting stop now. Thanks, everybody.